I think the number one thing is the speed of decision making and decisiveness. Coming from Nike, which I love, and I still love that company. I'm wearing their product right now. You get to it's just this like a size and scale of a business that the way in which you have to make decisions is just incredibly time intensive and resource intensive.
So welcome to Leaders on a Mission, where we uncover the journeys of visionary leaders shaping the future. Now today it's a great pleasure. I'm joined by Michael Newton, CEO of Qorium. Qorium are a company at the forefront of sustainable material innovation. And Michael really brings a wealth of experience from his time at Nike and now leads Qorium in revolutionizing the leather industry. So we'll explore the future of sustainable materials like vegan leather and how innovative technology is going to reshape the future of fashion. So Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, Simon, great to be here with you today. Thanks for making the time.
No worries. Just as I read out the intro, vegan leather, did I call that right? It's not really vegan leather, is it?
No, it's really not. And actually, in our industry, there's a lot of conversation about what do you call alternative leathers. For us at Qorium, we actually think what we do is pretty differentiated because what we're actually making is true, genuine leather. And so our leather is leather. And our goal as a company, as we like to say, is real leather reinvented. Because what we do is we actually take the best of what Mother Nature does. We take cells from cows and we use those cells in a really innovative way to make a replica, right? A reinvented way of true leather. There's a ton of other great companies and materials out there who are making alternatives to leather, some which are using a lot of chemicals and a lot of, oil-derived materials. There's a lot using bio-based materials as well. And so there's a lot of different terms you can apply. For us, I think the real term to use is leather. And so that's where we focus as a company.
Got it. But tell me, how did you end up? Just give us a view of a couple of moments, pivotal moments in your career that led to you really in your current role here of CEO of Qorium.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a journey I was looking back on just recently, talking to my children actually about it. But I grew up in New York City, and probably the most pivotal thing about growing up in New York is that both my parents were entrepreneurs. And so they really ran and built their own businesses. And what I learned from growing up in that environment was how much impact business could have and how much positive impact business could have. Now, that was back in the 80s. And so the idea of kind of, sustainability, triple bottom line, those things weren't around in the same way. But my dad in particular ran a business that made a tremendous impact on his employees. And he used to do crazy things. He actually used to pay people to quit smoking. And it worked. And he used to help his employees put down payments on houses. And, he really changed lives that way. And so for me, that really taught me from a very early age. And I did all sorts of crazy work from packing boxes to, wiring computers for him as a kid and for my mom's business as well. But it really just taught me that business is an amazing lever for change. And so I think that's where, for me, the foundation for the work today has come. And my whole career has really been driven on how can I leverage business and how can I leverage private enterprise to drive the most amount of positive change in the world. And, for some people, maybe there's a little bit of irony in that. But for me, there's not, because it really is, if we're going to make a broad amount of change, we really have to make a successful and a financially viable business. And so those things go hand in hand for me. And I'm not ashamed of that at all. If you can make a great profitable business that makes a lot of people a great outcome and a great living, super, because that's also the way in which we're going to make a great impact. For us at Qorium today, it's all about really a sustainable impact, but we're doing that through the lens of making a beautiful, improved, better product in one of the areas, the products that people love most, leather, right? Leather's everywhere. It's the sign of luxury. It's been around for thousands of years, but its supply chain is awful. And so how do we use business as the angle, to really make a change in that space to improve the world, improve the supply chain for that, but also allow people to have wonderful product and do it without any shame. And so I've been fortunate throughout my career, starting really when I was working as a kid for my parents. Those were my first jobs, to my days working on Wall Street as an investor, through an entrepreneurship I did in earlier companies, and then I spent a long time at Nike, which was a wonderful platform for me because that was a company very focused on sustainability, very focused on innovation. So how could I leverage the scale and the size of that business to bring to market some really great consumer products that also had incredible, kind of environmental footprint? And I was really proud of that work. And that's ultimately why I chose to join Qorium. And what I want to do for the rest of my career today and going forward is how do we harness business to drive that societal change? And I think we've got a great chance to do that here at Qorium.
Awesome. Maybe let's explore. You mentioned about the supply chain, in leather particularly. So I just want to understand, what some of the challenges are and what some of the problems are as you see the incumbent industry.
Leather, unfortunately, is sourced in a really challenging and damaging way. At the end of the day, the actual factory for leather is a cow. And that's a really inefficient factory. Even when that factory creates both meat and leather, right, the way in which that mass is created is highly inefficient. A cow didn't evolve for that task in that way, right? It evolved as an animal to live its life and live in harmony with the planet. And so it's been harnessed. And so that supply chain today just leads to huge consequences because you have cows who are raised all over the world, hundreds of millions of them, and they're raised in generally terrible conditions that are highly environmentally damaging, mostly factory farms, and you have huge CO2 releases, methane release, you have water usage, you have the destruction of soils and areas, you have a lot of land and forest that is cut down and converted into doing these processes. And then, of course, the cow themselves have a very difficult and I'll just say what it is, a cruel life. Then once that cow is slaughtered, the process to turn that hide into leather in itself is actually quite damaging too. You have to take that process through what's called take that leather through what's called a beam house process. And that's where the skin is turned into, kind of a collagen sheet that then can be converted into leather. But the process of doing that is quite damaging, requires a lot of chemicals, a lot of energy as well. It has affluents that are associated with it. And so there's a whole negative process too. Then ultimately there's a process by which that is converted into the final leather. That's actually the least damaging process of the whole side of it. And that's where it really turns into the wonderful product that people are aware of today. For us at Qorium, what we do is we get rid of all those steps before that final tanning and finishing process, and we replace it with just a very efficient, very focused, obviously highly innovative process where all we do is we create a uniform, precise collagen sheet that then can be turned into a wide range of materials, of leather types, I should say, whether it be for a handbag or for a car seat or for a glove or something else. And so it's really about taking that really nasty supply chain and getting rid of it in its entirety. And so if you look at some of the impacts, it's truly massive how much agriculture and cows have on the planet. There's some estimates that it's up to 14% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's a place where there's a lot of room for improvement. But it's obviously the material is loved and it's critical to so many products and to human, vitality and use. And so we got to make sure we can maintain that perfection and that, material as well.
Absolutely. How big is the market for leather though? Right? I know it's a global marketplace,
huge
right?
Market, yeah. It's a massive market. So the actual estimates vary a little bit, but with the work that we've done, the actual trade of leather itself is just over $100 billion US a year. So it's massive. There's, many large segments within that. Automotive is very large. Furniture is large. Luxury leather goods is quite big. Apparel and footwear are big ones as well. And so there's a number of key segments within it. But overall, you're looking at, a really huge market. And it is very, very global. So there's trade in hides from all different corners of the globe to other parts. Actually, one of the things that companies who, talk to us and are eager to work with us really stress is that the lack of traceability in the supply chain is really challenging for them too, because they can't tell a lot of times where their product is coming from and what impacts it's had. And so that's another place where we hope and we know we can make an impact. And so it's truly a global industry.
Yeah, amazing. The size of it, 100 billion. Wow,
it's huge. There's a lot of cattle.
Exactly. So it's funny you talk about the innovation of this, the supply chain and the innovation around this, but we're talking about a very incumbent industry that has probably operated the same way for hundreds of years, right? So tell me what kind of progress you've made to kind of date with things, because I know we're at the Qorium at the earlier stages of kind of growth, right?
Well, as you said, I mean, it's an industry that hasn't had a lot of innovation of it in the past. Humans have been tanning hides for thousands of years. There's been a lot of progress over that time, of course. And recently, there's been some really good work around reducing the impact of the chemicals in that industry. So there's been progress, but generally, it hasn't changed that much over time. That's where the opportunity lies. And actually, it's some of the biggest resistance we face is there's just a lot of incumbent players, right, who are very entrenched and don't want to see it change. But for us, as you mentioned, we're pretty early stage. The company's been around for just over 3 years. And so we're still at the stage where we are developing our full proof of product and the manufacturing process underneath it. We have built at this stage and have real proof of concept around both the product itself and our manufacturing methods, but we're still working to refine and hone those. We're still in the lab today, and that's both by design and by necessity. There's been a lot of companies, I think, who have tried to too aggressively expand and get ahead of where their science and their development is, and that's ended up with a lot of expense and unnecessary investment that's been a waste. And so for us, we're really focused on being as strategic and really as efficient and disciplined in how we work. And so that's leading us to really focus on driving that process as efficiently as possible at this lab scale so that we can ensure that the product is up to the quality standards that our customers demand, that we demand of ourselves, and then put us in a position where we can start to scale it and grow it. But we're still a few years away from being able to do that at real scale. And, it's by design, but, it's early days for us. We've got a lot ahead of us. There's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, got it. And yeah, it's interesting. If I look at the segment, right, if I look at cellular agriculture, this concept of taking cells out of the animal and then kind of growing them and developing them, it's been around now for a few years, right? Where we've seen a lot of that kind of investment and work has been more into kind of the food space, where people have been talking about, growing food products, as it were. Is this quite similar? Is it a similar kind of process? Is it based upon similar technology?
Yeah, it is actually. And so I think Qorium's a part of a wave of technology that I think is truly going to be just monumental for humanity. So synthetic biology, tissue engineering, cellular ag, as you referred to it, kind of these terms are thrown around quite a bit, is really, I believe, going to be a revolution for humanity, because what we're going to learn to do is how do we harness biology to make the things that we need to make and do it in a way that is most efficient and most beneficial for the planet. And we're just at the cutting edge of that, even though there's work that's been going on for, a couple of decades now in the space for sure. But when you think about the level of change and the level of innovation we're talking about, it's still very early days for sure. The technology itself does have overlap with a number of different, kind of use cases in our market. So, or in the space, I should say. So the technology is relatively similar to how you would make a cultivated chicken or a cultivated hamburger or, another product like that. There's other cultivated products that get created as well in the pharmaceutical industry. There's some for the cosmetics space as well. So there's a lot of places. Generally, what you're doing is you're taking a natural cell. For some people, you're able to modify and immortalize and make changes to that cell to make it more efficient and focused. For others, because of the nature of their business, they don't do that. We at Qorium do that. We have optimized our cell lines in order to enable our process. And what you then do is you essentially grow those cells and proliferate them like crazy in a highly optimal way. And then you put those cells to work. And for us, we put them to work creating collagen in a really precise and uniform ways that then can be turned into leather. If you're looking at a hamburger or chicken or perhaps a really high-end, call it sushi grade tuna or whatnot, it's a similar process where they take a set of cells, they grow and proliferate them like crazy, and then they have their cells go do the work. Those cells might be creating some sort of muscle tissue. They might be creating a fat or something else that's critical to that other type of product. But the process is relatively similar. And so that's actually really helpful for us. I often refer to us here, Simon, as a Gen 2 cell ag company because we're only 3 years old and we're pretty new to this game. We actually get to benefit from a massive amount of development and learnings and kind of the ecosystem coming online that if you started this 10 years ago, you were really much more in the Wild West. It's a very American reference, apologies. Much more in the Wild West than you are today. And so I'm actually very pleased for us because I now think the time is right to take that technology and apply it into the markets where it makes the most sense. And clearly I'm biased, but I think leather makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, no, awesome. Just thinking around that, clearly on the food side, you've got real people are eating stuff. There's a real challenge on the regulatory stuff with the FDA and
absolutely
EPA as well. With leather, a consumer product, is it less important? Therefore, is it a different regulatory kind of pathway? And
yeah, well, first and foremost, I'd say that we as a company take the safety and the quality of our product at the highest level. It's the most important thing for us, regardless of the regulatory environment, right? We are always going to hold ourselves to that standard and ensure that it's something that I want myself to use and my children to use and whatnot every day. But overall, it's one of the reasons why you pointed out, I think it's one of the reasons why the leather industry makes a lot of sense for cultivated products because the regulatory environment is much simpler. As you're not ingesting this product, right, you're not eating it as you would a burger or a piece of chicken. There's just a much clearer pathway to market, much lower regulatory barriers for us. And so while we will have to ensure that we're meeting the standards around labeling that any apparel company would have to meet, and there are some chemical restrictions, again, very easy, very clear, and very easy path to market for us from a regulatory front. And so it's one of the reasons why I think the leather market is a great place to be applying cultivation and tissue engineering to.
Yeah, amazing. Must be very interesting for you because I met you like a few months ago, and I think one of your co-founders, very well-known scientific kind of leader in the space, Mark Post it was, right?
Exactly.
And your background, it must be fascinating coming to work for, a company with this amount of science and kind of technology as helm, right? And
man, Simon, I'm learning more every day. I mean, the uphill battle is awesome. And actually, I was talking to a friend the other day, just catching up for a while. And he was like, a year and a half ago, you were working for Nike, leading a multi-100 person team, right? As a relatively senior exec in Portland, Oregon. Now you're living in the Netherlands, leading a Dutch venture-backed company that's a biotech business. Like, what the hell are you thinking? And, my point to that is like, hey, life is short. And the opportunity to learn more and be challenged is what I'm just seeking every day. And by God, I found that. So, but no, we have Mark Post, our chief scientific officer, a co-founder of the business. He's literally a legend in this space. What's amazing about him that most people don't always get to see is that he's just the most wonderful human as well. And because he's a professor by training, he's incredibly patient with me too. So that's good. And actually what I love working with him about is, I see it as he directs our lab team, and he's amazing in how he pulls out. There's a real leadership lesson here. He is not a leader who says, I know all the answers and I'm just going to direct the lab to go do it. He is just such an incredible professor at bringing out kind of the best of everybody and using the Socratic method and the Socratic approach to have people develop and conquer and drive towards the best results and have them learn and expand and grow along the way. And so he's doing that for our lab team every day, which gives them, I think that's literally the example of like 1 + 1 = 3 here, but also for me too, because it's teaching me a ton along the way. And it's been just a real pleasure. It's been hard at times. And sometimes I'm like, wait, what's that acronym? What, how do you do that? But that's part of the beauty of being here. And what I love as a person is just like, I'm just endlessly curious, and to be able to be a part of a little bit the movement we kind of talked about before, what synthetic biology is going to be for us, what I believe in 10, 20, 50 years from now, like the world is going to look entirely different because we will have harnessed Mother Nature in a way that is incredibly impactful and allows us to achieve so many of the climate and broader environmental goals that we have. So I'm just pleased as punch to be kind of the stupid guy in the room and learning every day, and helping to, drive this forward and bring a commercial point of view to the business and, really help steward what we're doing here.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, the yin and the yang, as it were.
Absolutely.
Together. Well, what do you, just looking at the technology without, needing to go into a huge amount of detail, but what do you think needs to happen for you to kind of bring that from the lab into a real kind of commercial kind of setting?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key things that we need to do. The first ones I would say are just around the product itself. So let's come and touch on that. The second one really is around the scaling of it. In both of those, there's obviously how do you cost optimize it and make it kind of available. And then finally, there is a piece around working on the commercial side that's super important. And so let me actually start there. While we talked about before, I think there's tremendous consumer excitement for this product. Everybody I talk to, not a single person kind of has an ick reaction or like, I don't know, they're like, wow, that's awesome. When can I have a leather jacket? And I'm like, well, unfortunately, we're not there yet, but maybe soon. And so I think there is work though with all the brands and with the ecosystem around the leather industry to, really develop and bring this through the supply chain and build the confidence and build the excitement in what it means to actually work with, leather created in the lab. And so that's a real effort. And we have a big focus on that. And for me, I actually lead the company with a product mindset. So everything is, while we're mostly a scientifically driven business today, everything is focused on how do we build a great product. We walk back from that. And I really believe that that's the mentality that we need in order to be successful as a company and have the environmental impact that we want to have. So commercial is really huge. From a cost perspective, it's hard. This is still an emerging technology and it's an expensive technology today. We think about three drivers of reducing costs. There's our pure innovation, just changes we can make to our process, right? How do we make it more efficient? How do we harness it? There's then just cost reductions that come from scale. And then there is, as I mentioned a little bit before, kind of the development of the ecosystem, right? So how do more suppliers come online? There's more purchasing in this space. The overall industry is developing, which makes it more accessible for us and for others. So we're working through that. We have very clear targets about what we need to achieve at every stage of the process and how we're going to achieve them. And so, we're a very rigorous, very kind of a robustly planned company that I think gives us the ability to clearly just every day come in and do the hard work of chunking against that. So those are the kind of the first two. Then you really think about just actually building the process to scale this. We can do it and we can do it at really nice sizes today, but doing that repeatedly and doing it in a way that's just, very efficient and is able to resist, some of the biggest risks of this process, including like bacterial infections and whatnot, is a real challenge. We have a wonderful CTO, a part of the business who he has 30 plus years of working with mammalian cells at scale. And so he's driving that process for us. And Ralph is just such a wonderful member of our team. Then I, get back to really the core, which is the science, right? How do we, continue to evolve this every day? And that's everything from working on, improving our cell lines to the food that we feed them, to, the different kind of bioprocess, tricks that we use to optimize it. And so there's a number of things we still have to do. What I feel good about is I think about all this ultimately as being, is this an innovation challenge or is this an engineering problem?
Right.
And we have both of those.
Yeah.
But what I know is we have a handle on both the innovations we need to drive and what's engineering, and we can then prioritize our efforts. And so I'm really confident that we can do this. We will have to have some things go our way, but good science is how you get to that, right? By having very rigorous processes, and we have just the best team. And so I know that we can kind of work our way through it. And some days I feel like, what is it, that movie Mars with Matt Damon? It's like, well, we got to science the shit out of this. And so, we just build the plans and we come to work every day excited to be able to do something really revolutionary. And there's super high highs. And there's some low lows along the way too. But that's part of this journey. And, I always like to say, because, a bit of a hero of mine, but Obama used to have a sign on the Resolute desk that said, hard things are hard.
Yeah.
And we're doing something that's hard, but the impact that can come from it and the opportunity that's here. And I believe we have the infrastructure and the rigor and the team and the talent and the supporters that we can then go work through. We just do that hard work every day.
Yeah, no, great. And because you're based in Amsterdam, that's where the office is, right?
No, actually, the office is in the southern part of the Netherlands. We're in a city called Maastricht, which is a great city that I did not really know about at all until a year ago.
Right. Okay. No, got it. Yeah, but you were living did you move specifically for this role from the US, or were you over in Europe anyhow?
No. So my family, I made the smart decision of marrying a Belgian. And so we had for a while wanted to get an overseas experience for our kids and move to Europe. And so my wife actually was able to relocate her job to the Netherlands. And so we moved over here. And then I actually found Qorium once I had relocated. And so, kind of was a fortuitous and really great opportunity that's come along and really fit exactly what I was seeking to do.
Oh, awesome. These things, they just come together at the right time sometimes, don't they, in life, right?
Knock on wood. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you think of the ecosystem then in Europe to help support, a kind of startup, as it were? How do you feel kind of?
It's... I don't want to insult anybody, so I kid. So it's definitely very different in America than it is in Europe. There's no doubt about it. And both sides have their pros and cons. I'll use a quick story to tell. So my father, born and raised in Australia, and he decided to come to America. And when he did that, he'd been working at a newspaper in Australia called the Australian Financial Review. And he went to the guy who was the editor of the paper at that time, who was this big, fancy Cambridge Don, smoke pipes in the office type thing. And he said to my dad, my dad's name is Harry. He said, "Harry, you're going to love America. It's where they substitute enthusiasm for intelligence." Which is just like such a brilliant line, right? And it's true, right? I mean, America is a place where enthusiasm and a can-do attitude and just an endless energy achieves massive amounts of things. And I love that. And I think I try to bring that in what I do. But at the same time, in Europe, it's a little bit different, right? It doesn't have quite that like exuberant, hyperbolic energy. You don't get kind of that same, irrational exuberance. And so as a result, I think you get a little bit more cautiousness. You get a little bit more just general conservatism. And so that can lead to some good choices too. But generally, I think it can also make it a little bit harder in some times as well. And so for me, it's just a balance of how do I bring what I believe is the best from a more American landscape, that enthusiasm, that can-do attitude, that just kind of run through the brick walls with the prudence and deep thinking and kind of engineering expertise and the, real substance and rigor that you get here more in Europe. And in Holland in particular, in the Netherlands, I really love, there's just a level of efficiency and diligence and just like overall level of intelligence here is just off the charts. And so we just try to bring all of that together. And our team, Simon, is super diverse. We've got people from Brazil, from Croatia, from India, from Italy, from Spain, from America, obviously from the Netherlands, Sweden, like great people. And I think what we do is we're building a kind of global culture here that kind of pulls it all together and helps us, I think, do something that's hard in a very sustainable way, but also in a way that is, just a little bit on, as any startup has to, like we got to bend reality to what we need. And so we still have a little bit of that exuberance, and I'll always be the kind of crazy American CEO who's a little bit too excited and maybe a little bit too energetic, but I like that balance. And hopefully our board and our investors like that too.
Yeah, no, great. No, thanks for explaining that. And listen, from an investment viewpoint, it's always an interesting one, right? No investor wants to, it's very important to engage them with the what's possible. But then I know there's a lot more marrying up with the realism of the goals, as it were. And I know you guys are looking for an A round at the moment, right? You're currently fundraising, yeah?
We are. We just actually, the beginning of this month, just about a week or so ago, kicked off our Series A fundraise.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And what's your impression on the marketplace at the moment for this type of technology and the kind of market you're addressing?
It's a hard time to be raising money, I think, in almost any space, unless you're running a pure AI business. And actually, I believe it's getting harder there as well from other CEOs and people who I talk to. Overall, there's a real understanding and enthusiasm about kind of the movement, the catalytic effect of synthetic biology and where we're going. But I would say there's a general attitude right now of just conservatism and patience. And I think that's being driven by the large number of elections going around the world, the general economic picture that we're seeing, and that nobody from an investor point of view is really being punished for waiting. And so I heard a really great, from an investor I was talking to, she summarized it super well. She said, everybody wants to be third. And what she meant by that was, nobody wants to be a lead investor. Nobody wants to be the second investor, but they certainly would love to be the third investor on something that's really, innovative and cutting edge. And so I think for us, it's just a matter of how do we build enough momentum and how do we build enough excitement, enthusiasm about what we're doing that we kind of get over some of those thresholds. There's plenty of money out there in the world that's looking for innovative companies. Biotech is a super interesting and interested space for people, but it's still a very challenging market. And so we're just going to be, very thoughtful about how we tackle it. And for us, it's we're fortunate to have a good runway ahead of us, but also it's about finding those investors who can really add value to our business and really be great partners for us. Because our board today and our investors today are literally fantastic. I go into my board meetings just thrilled to work with them because they add so much value to us. And so it's critical that we're able to do that going forward too.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, post-US election, I should say, do you, with a lower interest rate environment on the horizon, how do you see it? What's the crystal ball in terms of how that will evolve, do you think?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that in kind of Q1 of 2025, we'll start to see some acceleration in this space. I think that, we're seeing, the Fed has, projected that they're going to lower rates. Inflation levels just came in today for the US, and they came in quite a bit lower, which is questioning whether or not that rate cut is, going to come at the same pace and at the same size that was being projected. So we have to keep our eye on it's still very dynamic. But between, I think, things settling down with the election, between that rate cut coming, I think we'll see kind of the continued realization that the soft landing has happened. I do think we'll start to see things open up. Some of the data in the US around the markets have been super interesting, around the venture markets, that is. Just there's really been a consolidation around some very large funds who make a huge percentage of the total investment. And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy for the overall market in the long run. And so we'll have to see how that plays out too. But for us, a company that's really focused on driving a very, attractive business, but driving really big sustainability gains, we're going to focus on investors who really care about that. And we're going to focus on investors who understand our technology, who know biotech. And so I am very optimistic about the future. And I believe that, we'll be able to find great investors because we've got a great plan here and a great team.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. No, thank you for that. Very interesting. Just wanted to explore a couple of things with you about, I suppose, the differences the last 15 years at Nike and, as you said, in a range of senior leadership positions, and then, going to work for Qorium. How many people work at Qorium?
We're quite small. The team's only about 15 people today.
Got it. Yeah. And, as a headhunter, right, I have this discussion the whole time, hiring for startups and moving people from the corporate world, to the startup world. I'm really interested in your view, the real biggest challenges in making that adjustment and how you have to adapt as a leader to be effective in a really early stage small company.
I think the number one thing is the speed of decision making and decisiveness. Coming from Nike, which I love, and I still love that company, I'm wearing their product right now. You get to it's just like a size and scale of a business that the way in which you have to make decisions is just incredibly time intensive and resource intensive. There's so much consensus building. There's so much deck building. And frankly, there's so much conversation to yourself at that point. And so when you transition to a smaller business, your number one tool, your number one, and it's a free tool that you can leverage, is speed and decision making. And so it's something that I've been very clear about. And I struggled with at times and still do because, and this is, I'll be like, okay, got to make this decision. I'm like, all right, who do I have to go talk to? And it was like, well, what presentation do I need to build for like the 17 internal meetings that I need to do? Right now, I kind of look over the shoulder, I'm like, oh shit, I can just make this decision. And I believe, and I've studied Bezos and a few others who kind of speak about this idea of what's a one-way decision, what's a two-way decision. And so a one-way decision is one, it's like, once you make the decision, there's no going back. There's actually very, very few of those in the world, especially in business, especially for a company like ours. Two-way decisions are ones where if I make it quickly, we make it decisively, and we learn, we can then go adjust. And that's the vast majority of the decisions that I have to make every day. And so I really value speed and see that as being the key, kind of piece. And actually, I don't know if you've seen some recently, there's this whole discussion in Silicon Valley around founders mode, right? And Paul Graham wrote a piece and it was related to Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, and this notion. And you hear a lot of that. And basically this idea of like, as companies go from founders mode to call more managers mode, decision-making and the speed of it is one of the key things they just lose. And I was at Nike at a period where it really has transitioned from being a founders-led company, right, to being much more of a professional manager. And I saw that decision-making, kind of call it just concrete get poured onto everything. And so for me, it's a matter of being comfortable with moving in a different way and embracing that. That's one example of many. I mean, of course, I joke, and I had a pretty big team at Nike. My HR department was like bigger than whole parts of my team today. We had a comms level of support that's like bigger than some of our team, and so you just get used to like a level of resource that can be lovely. Right. I don't have an executive assistant. I used to have one at Nike. Right. So that's just, these little things in terms of how you work every day, you just have to adjust to that. And I think you have to be a person who is able to be very agile in how they work. And I actually love that. Like my leadership style, I call it, it's really leading by example anyway. So I want to be the guy who is fixing the copy machine at 2 a.m. and also talking to the board of directors or also working with the CEO of a large French fashion maison, right? So I really appreciate that and enjoy that. It's not for everybody, but that's some of the agility that I've had to bring as I've moved from kind of the world of Nike into the world of Qorium.
Yeah, no, got it. Thanks for that. Really interesting. And listen, thank you as well, Michael, for coming on today. It's been a great chat, sharing your journey, really interesting insights into Qorium's innovative approach to sustainable materials. So just found it a fascinating discussion and really thinking ahead towards the industry kind of transformation over the next kind of few years. So listen, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Next time I'll wear a V-neck and we'll really match.
And look, listen, it's been great. And to our listeners, really hope you enjoyed the chat. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Leaders on a Mission. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring conversations. So I'll see you next time.